Welcome to Env0, where you can confidently automate and manage your infrastructure as code at scale. In this video, we're going to see how Env0 enables a self-service environment for your developers to deploy applications quickly. We'll first see the configuration options available to an administrator to configure users, teams, policies, guardrails, and templates. Then we'll see how a developer is able to deploy IAC applications with those guardrails in place to ensure management approval is required if the resources being deployed exceed a certain cost, and to ensure these environments are protected from unauthorized modifications. Let's get started. Here we are in the organization dashboard, which provides a holistic view of everything deployed within the Env0 account to whoever has access. Let's take a look at the settings. And within the settings, you can manage your users. Each user has their own role. Now you can also have teams, and these teams also have roles. For the users and the teams, whichever role has the most permissions is the one that's going to be active for that user. Now, if you need a custom role, you can do that here. As you can see, this is one created called Finance. Take a look in here, you can see that it has very limited permissions. It allows a finance user to view audit logs, a dashboard, billing information, etc. Now, if you take a look in policies, we have a few policies here. Now, any policies that are set in the organization settings will trickle down to projects and the environments below them. So if you need to set a time to live for an environment, you can do that here. Right now it's set to infinite, but if you needed to set a custom TTL, which will destroy that environment after 12 hours, for instance, you can do that. So now we can take a look in our projects here. And as you can see, we've got in admin project, apps project, and infrastructure project. Let's take a look in the infrastructure project, which as you can see has destroy protection enabled. And within this infrastructure project, we have two environments for a resource VPC. If I needed to launch another type of environment, I can do that. This here was launched from the resource VPC template. But if I go to manage templates, I can add other templates to this project. For instance, if I needed to launch an EKS cluster, I could select that and save. And now I'm able to launch an EKS cluster, which will launch an environment. If I take a look at the settings here, you'll see a few common settings here like the users. This is how you can assign users to this project. Now, any user that has access to the project will have access to those templates and environments within that project. The same goes for teams here. And as mentioned before, whichever role has the highest permissions is the one that will be used by that user. Now we also have policies here. You can see that we can prevent destroy of environments in the project. We can limit the number of environments per user and set the max environments for the project. We also have custom flows. You can set a project-wide approval policy. And then we have this environment TTL once again. If it was not set within the organization, we can set custom ones here. You also have certain deployment settings such as cost estimation, environment outputs, which allows you to share those outputs between multiple environments. And then we even have drift detection, which can be run to check the environment for any drift that may have occurred. If someone were to modify the resources deployed within this project, drift detection will detect that and notify you. Now let's take a look at the apps project. And here you can see that there is an InfluxDB application deployed and a Grafana application deployed. Now if we look into the settings here, head to policies, we can see that there is a policy assigned to this project. Let's take a look at that policy. Here's the current policy here. And essentially, if the cost of the resources within that deployment, so for instance, if we were to launch a T2 large AWS instance or something similar, and the user launching this resource is not part of the management group or is not a manager, then it's going to pend, which means it's going to require authorization from someone who is a manager. Now you can see here we've gotten pretty granular. If it is under $10, it's just going to allow it. And if it has been approved by a manager, then it's going to allow it also. So now let's take a look at what this process looks like when a developer decides to deploy one of these templates. All right, so here I am as Maya Patel, one of the developers within the organization. If I head over to projects, I've got my apps and infrastructure. These are the two projects that I have access to. Now I do not have access to the admin project, which was available before. So if I click on apps here, I can create a new environment. So I'll click that right here, and we're going to deploy from a template. Now I can potentially deploy from VCS directly, but in this case, I want to deploy directly from a template as that has all of the permissions necessary for me and variables set. So if I click on that template, let's say I want to deploy a Grafana server. I'll click on Run Now. And here we have a randomly generated environment name, which is perfectly fine. Same for workspace. As you can see, using the Env0 remote backend is forced because that's how it was set in the project settings. And now if I take a look at the variables, I can modify several of those. And in this case, I'm going to modify the T2 micro to a T2 small. Once I've done that, you can see I can choose not to approve the plan automatically because a policy is in effect. So I'm going to go ahead and run this template and let's see what happens. All right, so most of the steps here are successful, but once we get to the cost estimation, which is above $10, we now are waiting on approval. As you can see here, approver must be on the management team if the cost estimation is greater than $10. So we need a manager to approve this. Now here I am logged back in as a manager. If I head over to my dashboard, I can see that this environment is waiting for approval. I can also go straight to the environment within the project, but this dashboard makes it very easy to see all of the approvals that are waiting. And luckily, I can even approve right here in bulk if I needed to and execute that approval. And the approval was successful. Let's take a look back from the developer's point of view, and I'll refresh the environment. And you can see the OpenTofu plan has been approved. So the deployment will resume shortly. All right, great. So the deployment was successful. We've got our output here. Head back to my apps, we can now see that it is listed. And if I open that, I also have my output here, which just so happens to be the IP address of the Grafana server that we just launched. So if I were to copy this and open it, we can see that I am greeted with a freshly deployed Grafana server. All right, so that is a general workflow that you might experience while using Env0 to set up self-service for your developers.